Hey guys, in this video you are going to see the demo or the session 1 of our 4 weeks long bootcamp of DSA. As you all know, in our bootcamp we will be solving 100 plus lead code problems on basic beginner topic like strings, arrays, stack, queue, linked list. Tree and graph will not be covered in this, that will be covered in level 2 bootcamp. So there will be 12 sessions live happening like this. This session is the recorded one because in the actual session there was some technical error and recording couldn't have happened, so that's why we are recording it again. So please don't worry why students are not there in the session. So for 11 sessions like this are going to happen. If you want to join our DSA level 1 bootcamp, you can register in the link in the description. If you have any queries, you can also let us know in the description.
I think I'm audible. So, like, since the session which I took yesterday that was not recorded because of some technical issues, so I am making this recording video for that content, basically with whatever I taught in that session. So yeah, this is a normal video only. So first of all, let me introduce myself to you guys. So I have been doing like competitive programming and DSA from last 1.5 years. And regarding my profile on LeetCode, I have solved 77 easy questions, 164 medium questions, and 50 hard problems. And I have given few contests also, so you can see my ratings here. Now on GFG, I have solved 312 questions, out of which you can see that I have solved 71 basic problems and 123 easy problems and few medium and hard problems too. And I have solved only 312 problems, but I have made almost 111 like 1,000 submissions, so approximately 3 submissions for each question. So like this is what you also have to do, like you have to uh, first of all solve all the question on your own. Like you have to give at least 30 minutes to each question, and like do like priority should be to solve it on your own, and then if you can't get any hint, then you have to see the editorials and other things. And then regarding my CP profiles, I was my highest rating on Coursera was 5 stars, but currently now I am 4 stars because of my bad contest, last bad contest. And on Coursera I have solved 100 problems, and on Code Forces my highest rating was expert, but currently I am specialist, and I have solved 562 problems on Code Forces. In the last 9 months, as you can see, I've registered 9 months ago only. Now, uh, now let me tell you like what would be the agenda for this class. So basically, okay, wait. First, we will see what some basic concept of time complexity, like why is time complexity required, and why should we use time complexity analysis to between two different algorithms. Then I will give some brief basics of arrays, and then we will solve few problems on arrays. So this would be our agenda for today's session. Now let's first see what is time complexity, basics of time complexity. Okay. So first of all, we need to see why we need time complexity analysis. So let's say you have two algorithms, A1 and A2, and suppose you need to compare both these algorithms, like which one is more efficient and which would return your answer in less time. So like when time complexity was not there, one solution was to run this A1 program in C1 computer and this A2 algorithm on C2 computer. Now like whenever you run any program on computer, it depends on what hardware and what software that computer have. Like suppose this computer have i5 latest chip, and this computer have i3 older version chip, okay, i3 Intel chipset. So like if suppose let's this is non efficient algorithm A1, and this A2 algorithm is efficient algorithm, okay. So when you will run let's say this, it is obvious that the chipset here is very like modern and a higher version of chipset, so it will take around 2 seconds to run this non-efficient program. But since this is very older version of chipset, so it will take almost 10 seconds to run this program. I am just taking an estimation, like, okay. So here you can see that even A1 was non-efficient algorithm, but because of the hardware and software of this C1 computer, this algorithm ran much faster than this efficient algorithm which ran on a older version of a computer. So this like for this we needed time complexity analysis just to analyze which algorithm will run faster irrespective of the hardware and software of computers. So like this is why we need time complexity. It is the basic need of time complexity. That why we need to do time complexity analysis between two different algorithms. Now wait a minute. The like basic the bookish definition of time complexity is basically the time taken by algorithm as a function of length of input. So it is basically time taken as a function of length of input. So this is basically the bookish language. And what does it mean? That suppose you are given an array of length n, and you do some operation on this array, like you write a program and do some computation on this array, and size of array is let's say n. So time complexity will always be a function of this length of input, that is this n. So this is what this definition mean. But like if I give you more understandable definition, it is basically like number of times the loops run. Number of times the loops run. This you can keep in mind while doing time complexity analysis. It is basically number of times the loop runs in your program. This is what you mean by time complexity analysis. So this is the definition which you can keep in your mind while doing time complexity analysis. Now next thing is there are basically three notations in time complexity. First of all, we will discuss these three notations. So first is basically omega. This represents the lower bound of your algorithm. Wait a minute, I will tell you what is lower bound. Second is your theta, and third is your big O notation, which is basically upper bound of your algorithm, and theta is basically the average of this lower bound and lower bound and upper bound, average of both of them, average of this and this. So now let me tell you what are lower bound and upper bound. So let's say you have one algorithm A1 and let's say this algorithm takes at least 2 seconds to run. Like whatever input you give in this algorithm, it will take at least 2 seconds to run, and let's say it takes at most 10 seconds. That whatever input n you give, it will run inside this 10 second only. So this is basically your lower bound, and this is basically your upper bound. That means that lower bound specify in how much time your algorithm will take at least, and upper bound is the time which tells how much time your algorithm will take at most. So these are the three notation in which we tell our time complexity now. Like obviously there are three notations, so we can represent our time complexity in all three of them, but this big O notation is widely used to represent the time complexity. So like what should be the reason of using big O notation? So it is obvious that suppose your A1, you have two algorithms A1 and A2, and suppose the lower bound for A1 is 2 second and the lower bound for A2 is 5 second. But again the lower bound upper bound for A1 is let's say 15 second, and upper bound for A2 is let's say 10 second. So I would like to ask you guys that is we should compare both this algorithm based on its lower bound or its upper bound. So it is obvious that comparing on lower bound is not efficient, because it might be possible that your algorithm is always getting a input which runs on upper bound only, like it takes the maximum time limit of your algorithm always. So it is always optimal to compare big O notation of both the algorithms, because comparing upper bound will assure that your algorithm won't take time more than this much time. So this is the reason why we use big O notation instead of these two. So always remember that you should always represent your time complexity in big O notation. Rest you should know what does these two notations mean, but they aren't of much use. So like we have seen what does time complexity means and what are the basic three notations in which we can represent our time complexity. Now next question comes, like how can we calculate time complexity? So okay, so let's say we take a simple program. Let's say our for loop runs from I equals to 0 till I less than n and I plus plus. So how much time according to you your let's say this is main function, this is main function. So according to you how much time your this main function will take to execute entirely starting from here to here? So it is obvious that when your line of code comes here, it will repeat itself n times. So this is the property of for loop also. Like in for loop, whenever your I will become n, it will break only then, else it will run inside this for loop again and again until your I becomes equals to n. Okay, so the time complexity for this for loop is basically n. So this is the time complexity of this program, this complete program, because there is only one for loop which is running from I equals to 0 till I less than n. So that's why its complexity is n, right? This is one thing. Now let's say you were doing wait a minute. Let's say you initialize some variable here before the for loop, and then you are just doing one thing inside your for loop, that sum equals to sum plus ai, and suppose you have this a array also. So always remember that whenever you initialize an array or initialize an array or initialize any variable, or let's say you do this like arithmetic operations or anything like if statement or else statement, they always take constant time. So they always take constant time only, they are not dependent on what n value you are getting, so they are always constant. So let's say while initializing you took c1 time, okay, and this for loop will take n time, whatever the value of n it will take, and this takes c2 time. So overall time complexity will be c1 plus n into c2, because this c2 work is done for n times, like it is inside for loop, so it will be repeated n times, so that's why it is n into c2. And one thing you should always remember, that whenever you write your time complexity in terms of big O notation, you always remove the constant parts. So these two were constant parts, so its time complexity will be O of n only. So this is one thing. And also here you should always know that suppose your time here your time complexity came this, but suppose your time complexity was this n square c1 plus n cube c2 plus c3. So when you will represent this thing in big O notation, you have to remember that first you have to find what is the biggest power of n. So here biggest power of n is 3. So whatever powers of n you have lower than this 3, you have to first of all remove all that. So n square will be removed. Now as I told you that you have to remove constants also, so you will remove c1 c2 c3 because they are constants only, so you are left with n3 only. So this thing you also should know that you remove all lower power terms and you just keep your highest power. And the reason behind doing this is basically because let's say I give you the input of n to be this much large, and let's say your c1 was 100 and c2 was 10, then these two c1 and c2 doesn't make any change in your time complexity because n cube of this would be very large and 110 in front of this is nothing. So that's why we remove constant parts. And also in front of n cube, n square is nothing, it is very small. So that is the reason we remove lower order terms also, to just simplify our things and write simple complexity, that is n cube only. So up till here we have seen that, like, what is the definition, what are the three notations, and like what was the need of time complexity analysis, and then we saw why we represent only in big O notation and what are lower and upper bounds. Then we see what is a time complexity for a for loop and initializing any variable or doing arithmetic operation or any if else statement. And then we saw that always we have to remove the constant part and any lower order term while representing in big O notation. So we have done this much till here. Now next thing comes here is like I would like to ask you that if I give you a function, let's say that n5 plus 5n4 plus n square plus 3. So I would like to ask you what will be the time how will you represent this function in big O notation. So as I said you that first of all you need to find what is the biggest power of n here, so it is 5. So I will remove all smaller power terms, so n4 will be removed and n square will be removed. Now I will remove all the constant part, 3 is constant, so I remove that. Now I am left with n5, so I will write n5 here, and this is the big O notation for this function, and it is quite simple thing also. Now let's come to few codes of which we will find the time complexity. Like let's say you are given two for loops like this. This is one for loop which is running from I equals to 0 till I less than n, and inside this for loop another for loop is running from j equals to 0 till j less than n. So what will be the time complexity for this? Now it is obvious that when your I is 0, your this inner loop is running n times. Again when I becomes 1, your inner loop will again run n times because it is running from j equals to 0 till j less than n. So it is running n times only. Then again for I equals to 2, your inner loop will run n times. So your I will run till I equals to n minus 1, and for n minus 1 also your inner loop will run n times. So the total time complexity will be the sum of these all. So you are doing n work for n times, n work for n times. So your total time complexity is basically O of n square for these two nested loops. So always remember that whenever you have two nested loops, so you will have a time complexity of n square only. Now let me take one more example here, that let's say you have a for loop inside its int I equals to 0. It is again running till I less than n. Then inside this for loop you again have a for loop where j runs from I plus 1 till j is less than n. Then what will be the time complexity for these two for loops? So let me tell you what will be the time complexity and how will we generate it. So again we will do the same thing, that for I equals to 0, your inner loop, that is j, this j loop, it runs from I plus 1 till n minus 1, so it runs n minus 1 times, right? Then when I becomes 1, it runs from j equals to 2 till j less than n, so your jth loop runs n minus 2 times. Similarly, for for I equals to 2, your inner loop will run n minus 3 times. So you can see that when I was 0, your inner loop ran n minus 1 time, that is n minus I minus 1. And when I equals to 1, your loop runs similarly n minus 2 times. So we can see that when your I becomes n minus 1, your jth loop will run 0 times. uh, okay, so what will be the time complexity? Complexity will be to sum all these things, right? The similar thing we did here also, like we found what for each I what work we are doing and then we sum them. So again we have found what work we are doing for each I. Now we will sum all these values. So when I will write n minus 1 plus n minus 2 plus till 0. So if you remember that the sum from 0 till n is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. It is a formula for to find the sum from all the numbers from 0 to n. This is the formula. So we can apply this formula here. So here our n will become n minus 1. So the time complexity will be n into n minus 1 by 2. If I simplify it more, it will become n square minus n by 2. 2 is constant, I remove the constant. N is lower order term, I remove n. So my big O notation will be again n square. So you can see that this for loop is also a n square time complex, have n square time complexity. So this is how we calculate the time complexity. Now the yes, you can find time complexity like this. Now the next thing comes is how to find the time complexity for recursive functions. So let's see that first. Let's see that, I mean, go on new page. Okay, so to find time complexity for recursive questions, you have two methods. First is your recursion tree method. Second is your master's algorithm. These are the two famous method to find the time complexity of recursive solution. So if you are preparing for, like, let's say GATE, so you should learn this master's algorithm because it have few cases, and if you match your time complexity with that case, you can easily find the time complexity. But we will not see this, we will see this recursive tree method. But I would like to recommend you guys that for recursive questions, don't you like, the more question you solve on recursion, you will get to know what is the time complexity for different recursive solutions. But we'll also see how to find it with recursive tree method also. So let first I will take one recursive function. Let me write it. So this is a basic recursive function. What we are doing here is this is a function which is passed a variable n, and I am writing a base case that whenever n becomes 0 I will return from here, and then I am making two recursive calls with passed with argument n by 2. So this is a basic recursive solution. So there are few steps to find time complexity using this recursive tree method. First is we need to represent this function in terms of t. Then like what is t? So first write whatever you are passed in your function, write that first. Like here we are passed t of n, right? Then you see that we are making two recursive calls with n by 2. So I will write this in terms of t, that I am making two recursive calls with n by 2, right? And also if you see that you are writing a if statement, so it will take some constant time. I told you some time back only that if statement take constant time only, so let's say it takes c1 time. Now you see that tn equals to tn by 2 plus tn by 2 plus c1. Now whatever is there in wait a minute, let's write this in big O notation, constant time. So whatever is written in big O notation, write it on the topmost level, and for this c, you let's say your n is n, so this is at this level. Let's say you are doing c amount of time. Now you see that from when your n is n, you make two recursive calls with n by 2. So from here make two recursive calls for n by 2, and if you see that you will again do some constant work, let's say c1 and c2. Okay, now again you will make two recursive calls from here, let's say it is c3 n by 4, c4 n by 4, again from here c5 n by 4, c6 n by 4. Then again you will make two recursive calls here, here. These recursive calls will be made until your base case is hit. So what was your base case? Whenever your n becomes 0, you return. So your last level will contain all n as 0, and you will be doing some c amount of work at each point, because if statement will be hit even in the base case also, right? So if you see that in the first wait a minute, if you see that in the first level you did some c amount constant time of work, and again in the second level you did c2 plus c1, which can also be written as c only, let's say some c constant. Then in third level you again did c3 plus c4 plus c5 plus c6 work, let's say it is again some c constant, and at the end level also you did some c level work. Okay, so now you have found what amount of work you do at each level. So this was first level, this was your second level, this was your third level, right? And this was your, let's say, xth level. So you found how much work you are doing in each level. You are doing c amount of work in each level, and there are, let's say, x levels total. So your total time will be x into c. Now we just need to compute what will be x, then we will get our time complexity. So as you can see that here your n is decreasing by like your n is always becoming half at after each level. So again when you will solve more and more problems on recursive tree method or recursion, you will come across different trees, so you will get to know what will be the height of each tree. So for now, let's say whenever your n becomes n by 2, wait, n becomes n by 2, the tree height for this transition is always log of n. Remember this, log of n. So you know that you have log n levels, this log n levels. So you know your time complexity will be c into log n. And when you will represent this in big O notation, you will remove this constant factor, so you will be left with log n. So your time complexity for this recursive code was log n only. I hope you have get how we computed. So let me once again go through what I did here. So first I represented my function in terms of t, that is tn equals to tn by 2 plus tn by 2 plus some constant factor, because we have written one base case which is a if statement. Then what I did, whatever was written in my big O notation, I took that thing on my first level and said that when for n equals to n, the work done will be c. Then I made two recursive calls. Here you can see that we are making two recursive calls n by 2. So I made two recursive calls, two child n by 2 and n by 2, and let's say we were doing c2 work in this call and c1 work in this call. So then again we made two recursive calls n by 4, n by 4, n by 4, n by 4, and we will make this recursive call until the base case hits, and base case was whenever n becomes 0 you return. So when my n became 0 I returned from here. So then I found what is the work done in each level. So I saw that in each level I did constant work only. So I wrote my constant here and then said that at each level I am doing c work. Then let's say if there are x level, I will do x into c work total. So I was left with to find what is the value of this x. So then I said you that whenever your transition is like this, that n becomes n by 2, the tree height is always log n, that is your levels, total levels will be log n only. So we replaced x with log n, and then while writing it in big O notation, I said that we remove the constant factors. So I removed constant c and then return O of log n. So this is how we find time complexity for recursive questions. I will take one more example again. Let's say you have this recursive function 1n, and inside this again the same recursive same base case, that is whenever your n becomes 0 you return. But now you have one for loop also running from I equals to 0, I less than n, and it is doing some kind of work, let's say. Then I am making recursive call of fun of n minus 1, let's say fun of n minus 1. Now if you closely see, we discussed that we have to represent our this fun function in terms of t. Let me check if recording is done, is going on or not. Yes, it is going correct, right? Okay, so I told that you have to represent your function in terms of t. So I wrote t of n equals to, and you are making a recursive call with n minus 1. So I wrote that also in terms of t. Now if you see what in each recursive call, what amount of work you are doing, some constant time will take here. Then there is a for loop. I said for loop your time is n only, so total time taken in each recursive call is nothing but n into some constant. When we will write this thing in terms of O, like big O notation, we will remove this constant factor, so we are left with n only. So for this function, this is a t notation. Okay. Now I said whatever is written in your big O notation, represent that write that in the topmost level. So we will do the same thing. I wrote n here. Now wait, n, like we are doing n work in first level for when your value of n is n only. Now you see that we make a recursive call for n minus 1. So I made a recursive call for n minus 1, and now what work we will do? We will do O of n, that is n minus 1, because now our n is n minus 1. Now I will again make a recursive call for n minus 1, that is n minus 2, and the time the work we do at this level is again n minus 2. So this is how we will go down and down and down. at the last level, when n becomes 0, work done will become 0. So you can see what work we are doing at each level. Then now we are doing work n plus n minus 1 plus n minus 2 up till 0. So while telling you the how to calculate time complexity for iterative solution, like for for loops, I told you that the sum from 0 till n minus 1, all the numbers from 0 to n, the formula for this is n into n plus 1 by 2. So if you closely see, we get the same thing here, the sum from 0 to n. So the time complexity for this will be n into n plus 1 by 2, and when we will write this in big O notation, it is n square. So this is the time complexity for this recursive question. And if you see that we didn't need to find the level, the height of this tree, because we saw that at each level our n is decreasing by 1 only. So it is quite obvious that the total levels will be n only, because at each level we are doing this work. So we already knew that at each level we will do n work, n minus 1 work, n minus 2 work. This is, so we just computed it using formula only. Now but in above question we knew that we are doing c work in each level, but we didn't know how much times we have to do this c work. So that is why we need to find the height for this tree, which came out to be log n. So this is how you calculate the time complexity for your recursive codes. But again, I will recommend you guys that more and more question you solve on recursion, you will get to know its time complexity on your own. But if you want, you can try this method also. It will help you to find time complexity for almost 90% of recursive questions. Now I think recursion is clear to you guys. Now let's move to next part of our session, that is arrays. So arrays is a very basic data structure. It is a data structure where we can store collection of data. Collection of data of similar type. Okay, so array is a data structure in which basically you can store a collection of data of similar type. Like if you make an array of type int, then you can store only a collection of data of type int only. Or if you make a array of float type, you can store float type of data only in that array. Or if you make of string, you can store only string type of data in your array. Now this is what is array basically. Now let's see what is how memory is allocated to arrays. So in arrays basically you have to specify the size of array. I hope you guys know this, that whatever let's say I specify the size of this array to be 5. So this is how you specify the size of array. Now what internally the compilers do is they allocate 5 blocks of memory to your this array. Five blocks. Okay, these are the five blocks of memory for this array. Now if you don't know, the indexing of your array starts from 0. That and also one thing, that you can access any index of array just by doing this. You can write whatever index you want, you can write it inside this square brackets, and you can access that index easily. So I was telling that whenever you initialize an array, your memory is allocated to your array. Like if you initialize the array of size 5 blocks will be allocated to your this array. Now let's say the memory address for your first 0th index is 2048. So in arrays, the blocks of memories are allocated in contiguous form. That is, if you made an integer array, you know that int takes 4 bits of memory. 4 bits of memory. So if 0th index is allocated, is given a memory address of 2048, then the memory address for 1th index will be nothing but 2048 plus 4, which is 2052. Then for memory address for second index will be 2056. Memory address for third index will be 205. Memory address for third index will be 2060, and memory address for fourth index will be 2064. So this is how memory is allocated to your array in a contiguous form. Whatever the size of your this data is, in that form the memory is allocated. If you have initialized an char array, let's say of 5 size, so you know that char takes 1 bit of data. So if your 0th index was at 248, your first index would have been at 2049, your second would have been on 205, and similarly the next. So this is how memory is allocated to your arrays. This is one thing. Now this is pretty much what is the basics for arrays. Now we can solve questions on arrays. So the first question we will solve is basically two sum question. What this question says is, you will be given an array, let's say this 1 2 3 4 5, and you will be given a target value of, let's say, 6. This is the target value. You need to tell me the indexes of two indexes, the sum of which is this target value. Like for this array, if you see the sum of 0th index value and this 4th index value, if I give indexes to them, the value at 0th index and the value at 5th index, the sum of them is 6 only. That is 1 plus 5 equals to 6. So you have to return me this 0 and this 4. And if my target value would be 5, you have to return me the index 1 and 2, because 2 plus 3 is equals to 5. So this is basically what the question says, that you will be given an array and a target value. You need to tell me the indexes, the pair of index, the sum of those values will be 6, the target value. So this is the question. So like here I would, if in the real session I would give you some time to solve this question. So now let's discuss what would be the approach. One approach can be to, like, you can run two for loops. Let's say you run the outer loop from int I equals to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. Okay. And you can then run the inner loop from int j equals to I plus 1, j less than n, j plus plus. Then you can simply check that if at any point your ai plus aj becomes equals to target, this value becomes equals to target, then you have found your the pair of your index whose value sum is equals to target. So this is how you can do. I think you have get the approach, that for each I running from 0 till n minus 1, I am checking every element as a possibility that it would both these value would sum to target, and whenever my this if condition hits that this value is true, that ai plus aj equals to target, I will store both these indexes, and then after these two for loops I will just print this I and j, or if print this I and j like this. So this is the basic approach for this question, and we have discussed the time complexity for these two nested for loops. It comes out to be n square. So the time complexity for this for loop for this question, for this approach is basically n square. Okay, if I also tell you like if I also dry run this approach to you guys, I can also do that. Wait a minute. Okay, so let's say you have an array like this. Let's say you have array this 1 2 and 3, and you need to find your target value is, let's say, 5. So you need to find pair of indexes whose sum is basically 5, like the value at those indexes should be equal to 5, that the sum of those values. So you will first run for I equals to 0. For I equals to 0, your j will first run for 1. So you will check is 1 plus 2 equals to 5. So it is not true, then your j will come to 2. Then you will check inside your if statement that is 1 plus 3 equals to 5. It is also not true. So you will come up, this for loop will get over. Now your I will be incremented here. Then your I will become 1. Then your j will run from I plus 1. So your I is 0. So j will run from 2. You will check is 1 plus 3 j was 1, so at 1th index you have basically 2, so you have to check for 2, that is 2 plus 3 equals to 5. It is true, so you will get inside this this if statement. Then you can basically store that index 1 is equals to I and index 2 equals to j, and then whenever you this both the for loops get over, you will have the pair of index as your answer, and then you can just print them. So this is how your algorithm will work here. Now we should move to our next question. So our next question was to basically find duplicate. So wait. So what the question says that you will be given an array, let's say 1 2 3 1 5 3. So you need to return me all those numbers which have their duplicate. Like if you see 1 is present here and 1 is present here also, so both these are duplicate values, so you need to return me 1. Now if you see this 3 again present, so both are these duplicate values, so you have to return me 3 also. So you should return me an array of those values which are their duplicates in the array. So this is the question. So again I would have given you like 5 to 10 minutes to attempt this question on your own in the real session, but let's see how to approach this question. So one sim like one the approach would be, again you will run a for loop, outer for loop from int I equals to 0, I less than n. Remember that n is here the size of the array. Okay, so and inside this for loop you will run a j loop also. Similarly from I plus 1. Then isn't it easy that you can just check if your AI is equals to AJ, then the AIth value is basically duplicate, because it is present on two different indexes, because I and J will always be unique, like they will be different from each other. So here you can simply print your AI value, that indicating that your AI has a duplicate value in this array. If I like dry run the this question for an like this input only, like this is very big input, so let's say the input would be 1 to 1. Wait, 1 to 2. So when I equals to 0, our inner loop will run from j equals to I plus 1. So j will first run for 1. So we will see that is 1 equals to 2. It is not equal. So we will increment our j pointer. So j will become 2. Then we will see again 1 is equals to 2, because if I give indexes, this is 2. So we will compare 0th index and 2th index, because we need to compare ai and aj. So we will see that 1 is again not equal to 2, so we will come out from this for loop. Then again we will increment our I pointer. Our I pointer will become 1. Then our j will run from 2. So we see that 2 is equals to 2. Then this if condition will get true, then we will simply print 2 in as our answer. Okay. So this was one question. Now let's see our third question on arrays, which I took in the last session. So the question was to find third largest number. So in this question, what you have to do, you will be basically given array again, because we are solving question on array only, so array will be there. So you will be given this array. You need to tell me what is third largest number. So you can see here that 5 is first largest number, 4 is second largest number, 3 is the third largest number. So you need to return me this value. So this is the question you need to solve. So like you can think for like 1-2 minutes, then we can say see. So let me tell you what we can do here is, one approach is to basically just to sort your array in descending order. So if you sort this array in descending order, your array will become this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you can just return the value at 2th index, because 0, 1, 2, 3, this will always be the third largest number. But you need to see here that your array should contain all the unique values only, because let's say if your array was 1, 4, 4, 5, so when you will sort it in descending order, it will become 5, 4, 4, 1. The value so indexes will be these. So value at 2th index is 4, but 4 is not the third largest element here is 1. So you need to remember that after descending you can return 2th index element only when your array contains only unique elements, like there are no duplicate elements. Okay, so this is one approach, and it will run if your like the array is contains only unique elements. Also if it contains duplicate values also, you can also traverse your array from starting, and whenever you find a third unique value, like in this case you will first find 5, then you will move you will say that you have found 5 as a unique element up till now, then you will move to 4, then on 4 you say that you have find your second unique number, then you move again to 4, you say that this is a duplicate number, so we will not increment our count. Then we move to 1, we say that it is also a unique number up till now, so we will increase our counter count, which will become 3, then we will return this one. So this is the approach for this question. if it contains duplicate elements. Else if it doesn't contain duplicate elements, you can simply return the this 2th index value. Then like the time complexity for this approach would be n log n, because for sorting the most efficient algorithm takes n log n time, and to just to return the the 2th index value, it takes constant time. So your time complexity overall will be n log n for this sorting algorithm. Now n log n, sorry. Now the more efficient algorithm we can think of is let's say I initialize 3 variables: a minus infinity, b again minus infinity, c again minus infinity. And let's say I am assigning meaning to these 3 variables, that a is my first largest number, b is my second largest number, c is my third largest number. So I hope you guys have understood what meaning I have assigned. Like, my a will always contain what is the first largest number of the array, b will contain the second largest number of array, c contains the third largest number of array. So this is one thing. Now what we can, like, let us keep it aside, the meaning of our variables. Now what we will do is, like, first I will write the approach and then I will explain that. What we will do is, we will traverse the array from I equals to 0 till I less than n, right? Now we have to write few cases here, that if your a of I, no, array of I is greater than a, that means that your a represents the first largest number of your array, and now your array I has come, like, the ith index value is greater than a. So don't you think that we need to update our a value, because as you see here, our a value represents the first largest element of this array, and the ith index value is greater than a. So we have to, like, we have to change the value of our a variable, because it represents the first largest number. So obviously array I is greater than a, that means that array of I is the largest element. Now one thing to notice here, that when array of I became the first largest number, our ath contained the second largest number. Why? Let's say your array was like this, and currently this was your a, 3 was your a, b was 2, and c was 1, and let's say the next element which came was 4. So now a will point to 4 because 4 is the first largest number. Then b will point to 3 because 3 has now become second largest number, and then c will point to 2 because it has become third largest number, right? So you have to write these statements also here. I hope you have get what I mean by these 3 statements. Now we will write our else if statement, that if array I is not greater than a, then it will not enter this if statement, it will come to here. Now we will check if array I is greater than b. Now we say that, suppose here, let's say for now a was 5, b was 2, and c was 1, and now your next element came to be 3. So 3 is not bigger than 5, so a contains first largest number only, but b is greater than 3, so b need to be updated to 3 because 3 is now the second largest element, and c has to be updated to 2 because it is third largest element, because now 1 has become the fourth largest element, but we know that our c represents the second largest element. So we have to do the same thing here, that c becomes b and b becomes array I. And the last else if statement is basically that array I is greater than your C. In this case, just we have to do is C equals to array I. Why? I will tell you that. Let me rub all this. Let's say your A was 5, B was 4 and C was 1. Now let's say your next element came out to be 2. So A is obviously greater than 5, so it is only the first largest element. B is greater than 4, so it is again 4 is again the second largest element. But now third largest element is this 2, not this 1. So we have to update our C to this 2. So that is why I have written C equals to array I, and this is, wait a minute. Now you can see that this is an algorithm which runs in O of n time complexity, because we are just simply running a for loop from I equals to 0 till I less than n, and inside this we have written just 3 else if and else statement, which is nothing but runs in constant time. So our overall time complexity is O n only. So I hope you have get the question now. And after this for statement you just need to return C, because as assigned by meaning we have to return third largest number, and our question also asked us to return what is the third largest element in the array. So this was the question which I discussed in the last session. Now the last question which I discussed in the last session was that you will be given an array and you have to basically rotate this array. So let me give you an example. Suppose you have this array. So after rotating, this array will look like this: 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you will be given this array and you have to output this array. You have to change the values like this so that it is rotated 180 degree. This is the question basically. So how can you approach this question? So again I would have given you 5-10 minutes if it was if it was a real session, but let's discuss the question now. So if you see that let me wait. Wait a minute. What we are doing is basically we are moving this 1 to this position and we are just moving this 5 to this position. Isn't we doing this only, that our 1 came here and 5 came here? And then what next we did is we moved our 4 to we moved our 4 to this position and moved our 2 to this position. See, we did this only, and then the 3 remain at its position only. So if you get some intuition of the algorithm, that's good. But what we are basically doing is we are swapping the two extreme values. Like here, first of all, the two extreme values here are 1 and 5. So we swapped these two values. Then the two extreme values are 2 and 4. We swapped these two values. Like we bring 2 here and we brought 4 here. Okay. Then we did with 3, like we swapped 3 with 3 only. So it didn't make any difference. So this is the approach only. Like what you will do, you will just run a for loop from int I equals to 0, I less than n by 2. I will tell you why I have run this loop till n by 2 only. And you need to just swap. What you have to swap? You have to swap ai value and a n minus I minus 1 value. Why a of n minus I minus 1? You can see from here only. The index for this was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see here n equals to 5 because there are 5 array elements. So when your I was 0, you have to swap it with j equals to n minus I minus 1, that is nothing but n minus 1, which is nothing but 5 minus 1, which is 4. See, you swap 0th index and 4th index. Then when for I equals to 1, you swapped with j equals to n minus I minus 1, which is n minus I is 1 here, minus 1, which is 5 minus 2, which is 3. See, you swapped 1 with 3, that is you swapped 2 and 4. So this is why I wrote a, you have to swap these two values. For those who don't know how to swap value, it is simply that you make a temporary value variable and assign it a value of ai. Then you assign ai a value of a of n minus I minus 1, and then you can simply assign n a of n minus I minus 1 as temp. This is the code for your swapping two values. So you have to just do this only. Now the question comes, why I ran this loop till n by 2 only. So if you see closely here, first you swapped 1 and 5. When you swapped 1 and 5, your array became this: 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. When your I was pointing to here. Okay. Now your I will come here because we did I plus plus. So you swapped this value and this value. So after swapping this, your array will look like this: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now your array will break because n by 2 is equals to 5 by 2, because we know that our n was 5. So 5 by 2 is equals to 2. So I am running till I less than n by 2. But let's say if I have ran this loop till I equals to n, so my I pointer will come here. So it will swap 3 with 3 only, because I equals to 2. So n minus I minus 1 is 5 minus 2 minus 1, which is 2 only. You have to run this I less than equals to n by 2. So you will swap 3 with 3, which won't make any change. So your array will look like this only. But when your I pointer will come here, your array would look like this. When your I pointer will come to 3, your array will be this. Then if you swap these two values, because now our I is 3, so n minus I minus 1, what will it be? 5 minus 3 minus 1, which is 1. So if you swap these two values, your the array which you rotated will again come to your original array only, because your 2 will now come here and your 4 will come here, and with that were only the previous positions of these two elements. So that is what we don't want. So we run this particular loop from I equals to 0 till I less than equals to n by 2. This is the reason why I run till n by 2 only. So these were the questions which I discussed in the last session, and you can also practice them on LeetCode also, and try to submit and see if your solution is accepted or not. So this was pretty much for this session. uh, Hoping like if I wait a minute, wait. Wait a minute. Huh. So this is our like basically what our boot camp would look like. So in the first day we solved these four problems, and I give the brief of time complexity also, and I gave these fifth and sixth problem as homework, and now in the next session we will solve all this till like here, and I will give few problems as your homework. And this is the day 3 and 4, that is searching sorting, then day 5 and 6 strings, then day 7 and 8 linked list, then day 9 and 10 stacks, and 11 12 as queue. So this is how our boot camp will run. So if you guys want, you can also register for it and get started with your DSA. So at last, thank you.